Very good evening and welcome back to your weekly dose of the Stretty cast. It's international break, and as much as we all despise such war crimes in the middle of a season, it does give us a chance to take a breather for a moment and shift our focus to areas we want to cover, but maybe we don't get the time. Sit back, relax, and get yourself comfy. It's episode 194, and tonight, I'm your host, Brian Murphy. I'm joined this evening by three of my Stretty News comrades, soldiers in arms, if you may, and we give a shout out to our regular host, Sean Connolly, who has apologised and can't make it tonight. Dale O'Donnell, you're welcome as usual. How's all in the Clonmel region?
Good, boring international break as per usual, with a few highlights. Obviously, it's been good to see Kobbie do so well. Trying to navigate through the hype, which I don't think is good for an 18-year-old, but hopefully he can deal with it. But other than that, I'm looking forward to United getting back to action because we have a big month or two ahead of us.
We have a returning Stretty News writer, a man that if he was any more laid back, he'd be lying down. Matt Henderson, if you're not joining us from Tesco, which you have done before, can you describe where you're located this evening and how's life?
I'm currently parked by a local green, watching dog walkers in a minibus. And I'm all right other than that. Just looking like a bit of a pervert.
Nothing new there. And making her long-awaited Strettycast debut, I can't say I know too many people with more insight and knowledge on Manchester United's academy, even though I do like to give her a bit of a ribbing in the group chat that I'm the authority when it comes to this topic. Joining us all the way from Albania, Stretty News writer Fabiola Cecu, which I hope I've pronounced right. Fabiola, how are you this evening?
Hello, everyone. Actually, good job on the pronunciation on that one. Quite difficult, surely. I'm doing fine, and actually, this debut comes directly with the Kobbie Mainoo one, so it's poetic, I'd say. So, yeah.
Definitely a fitting episode for you to join us. Right, let's kick it off quite easily on... Sorry, Dale, do you want to jump in quickly?
I just wanted to give a bit of an explanation as to why you are, of course, hosting this one. It's down to pronunciations. I just couldn't be trusted with Fabiola's surname.
Now, to be fair, you have dropped some Umbapas and Ineos and some pretty horrific pronunciations. Trying to put Fabiola on this podcast and getting you to host it would have been an absolute shit show. So I took the mantle on this one, rightly so. Right, let's get into it. Let's dive into the episode. First off, Gareth Southgate, a name that not a lot of us would associate with Manchester United, but funnily enough, over the last while, be it social media click articles, be it absolute nonsense, but be it something, Gareth Southgate's name has been hotly tipped and linked with Manchester United as the future manager to replace Erik ten Hag in the summer. Now, let me start this off by saying we have adamantly and vehemently backed Erik ten Hag on this podcast, and we will continue to do so, I'm sure. On a personal note, I find it utterly disrespectful that a manager still in his job, a manager whose job is not directly on the line, is probably sitting at home reading all these articles and seeing all these rumours suggesting he's being replaced in the summer, even down to bringing the entire England staff to Manchester. We've had news that Gary O'Neill has been interviewed for a role at the club, whatever that role will be, and managers' names are being touted about like Smarties. Dale O'Donnell, what's your feelings on this? Tell me, what's the first thing that comes to mind when you see Gareth Southgate linked with Manchester United?
Oh, I shudder. Look, he's done a good job, I guess, with England. Haven't won anything, but he's done nowhere near enough to be put into the frame for a job like this. You know, he had a job at Middlesbrough. I think the best thing he picked up there was the Manager of the Month award. It's ridiculous that he's linked with this job. I think we all know that there's a big difference between international football and club football at the highest level. And Southgate has done nothing to warrant a move to Manchester United. The other thing as well, which I find baffling, is all the candidates were being linked with Roberto De Zerbi. You mentioned Gary O'Neill, Gareth Southgate. I wouldn't have any of these over Erik ten Hag. The other thing as well is you're on about headlines and international break, and they're always looking for a story. And it was convenient to have Southgate in the frame the past 2 weeks because they got an opportunity to ask Southgate directly about managing Manchester United. But you're right in what you say about the disrespect, because who I looked at most for showing disrespect in the past 2 weeks was actually Gary Neville. And the little podcast that he did with Keane, and they were talking about how they could see Southgate become United manager. What a crack of shit for starters. There's no one that can really see him become United manager. But what I'd like to know is, do you think that they will be having that conversation with Ollie as manager? Because I never heard Gary Neville speak like that. When I'm not saying that he should have, because we were all behind Ollie, but it's just about the disrespect towards Ten Hag and from the media as well, I think.
Even on that podcast I did recently with Ollie, it was a fantastic watch and listen, they did make a slight, what would you call it, reference to the fact they'd never have thrown him under the bus, because obviously they're friends with him and whatnot. Now, it shows that their neutrality kind of goes out the window a small bit, because obviously when things were going a bit tits up for Ollie, it would be expected for pundits at that level at Sky Sports to call him into question, which they obviously didn't, out of friendship. Fair enough. Matt, what really baffles me, and Dale slightly touched on it, Gareth Southgate is kind of known as a manager that plays, we'll call it negative football, or he doesn't use what he has, the tools that he's of his arsenal that he can use. Like, the English side for the last few years has had some absolutely phenomenal attacking footballers, some brilliant midfielders, wingers, strikers, but he's always viewed as a manager that he just doesn't get over the line, mostly due to the fact that he doesn't just go balls out and play attacking football and use what he has. So what makes me kind of curious about the links, surely if Erik ten Hag has been replaced, he would be replaced hypothetically by a manager that can come in and play really good, attractive, fabulous football. That's not Gareth Southgate. Like, where are these links coming from? Absolute nonsense, Matt? Or do you think there's substance to it? Or what's your feelings in general?
All the names that Dale mentioned, just to kind of go back to that, none of them have won anything. So we're going for managers to get us back to winning things with managers who haven't won anything. And there's a weird thing over here that Southgate's seen as successful, but he's not been successful at all. He's lost a final that was there to be won. For reasons like you say, he didn't go for it. Italy were the worst side in the game. The talent that he's got, he should have gone for it with. He bottled it against Croatia in the first World Cup he was in, and again against France. And like you say, he doesn't play the gung-ho kind of football that you'd want to see, but his only club management has been relegation battles with Middlesbrough, or mid-table battle at best with Middlesbrough. So that's how he's predisposed to manage, is just managing to get by. The links to me are complete nonsense, and I think the only tangible way that he's being linked is the Brailsford. I think they knew each other, and I think, mate, is there something with Dan Ashworth with him? Maybe I might be wrong there, and that seems to be the only tenuous link between us and him. He shouldn't be anywhere near it. They talk about England hype for the likes of Mainoo and players, but it's England hype with the manager, because that's the only reason that Gareth Southgate's name will be mentioned with the biggest job in English football. Whether we're currently the best job in English football, obviously, is up for debate at the minute, but it's the biggest. So,
Fabiola, a lot has been said here before you get a chance to speak, and I suppose the only people so far that we've named that have actually spoken about Gareth Southgate in a positive manner have been Roy Keane and Gary Neville, saying he could be viewed as a Manchester United manager. Do you have any opinion contrary to the boys, or are you in the same boat? Do you think Erik ten Hag should be staying where he is? Could you see Gareth Southgate coming in, or is it just much to do about nothing?
I think, I definitely agree with what Dale and Matt said, because what we know so far is that Roy Keane and Gary Neville are actually supporting him. But let's remember one thing: one of the reasons that we actually sacked Ole Gunnar Solskjaer is regarding those lost finals. So he didn't make it to the final step. And Gareth Southgate actually got a chance with England to do the same against Italy. And in the end, he failed as well. So meaning what would we be doing in here is actually go to the same path. And on that note, I would rather definitely keep Ole Gunnar Solskjaer rather than get another terrible version of him. So it's practically having the same version over and over, meaning that the past few years have gone to nothing again. And that's the thing since 2013, which I don't think we actually need more of that.
With Southgate as well, it was Samuel Luckhurst who reported it last week that he believes Omar Barada, the new chief executive, will be in charge of the managerial situation. Now, if that is true, no decision has been made right now regarding the future, because Barada is going to have to suss out Eric Ten Hag and see if he can work with him. And on that as well, let's not forget the Man City were plotting Eric Ten Hag for when Guardiola was going to leave, and Barada was at Man City making big key decisions. So I think what we're seeing is, because, and I mentioned this in the podcast a few weeks ago when Radcliffe's deal went through, that I thought that the biggest problem Ten Hag faced was the lack of clarity around his future. And I still stand by that, because what I think it's created is an opportunity for the media to create endless shite. From what I understand, and I'm not saying what I hear is always right, no decision has been made. I don't believe Eric Ten Hag knows. I believe he is planning for next season, as Louis van Gaal did before he was sacked. But there's still a lot to go this season. But I go back to what I said previously about the Liverpool win, Brian. I think that is such a big win to come the end of the season. Be one of the reasons we'd be saying why we want Ten Hag to stay. It's been a tough season. Didn't get the big wins that we would have hoped in games that we needed it. But that Liverpool one, that could be a turning point to a good end to the season. And I just think it's madness that we're after going through a really good period since January, but yet the manager is still being picked at.
Yeah, and it is a kind of an amusing one that we play really good football when we got all our players back. We had a great record. We were doing really well. All of a sudden, we have one bad game, and all of a sudden the night are straight out again for Ten Hag. You touched on something lovely there, because after the City game, everyone was kind of thinking, right, we're going to have to really come out, and I was the same. Going to have to come out here, backs to the wall, defend our arse off, and try and nick it on the counter. And we did really well for large periods of the game, and it just backfired. Fair enough. The Liverpool game, you could be forgiven for thinking it was going to be the same, because again, you're going up against a side who are battling for the top of the league, both of them going for the title. You could arguably say, are we going to set up the same way? Are we going to go defensive and try and nick it again? And all of a sudden, we saw Manchester United come out of the traps toe to toe, which I don't think anyone really expected. And it was phenomenal to watch. It was one of the best football matches we've seen in years and years and years. It was a brilliant performance. Some lads stood up and you were like, Jesus, where is this after coming out of? Like, this style of play. One of the things I criticised Eric Ten Hag for was the style of play, that we don't have a visual and a notable style of football, which obviously is down to the fact that he's missing so many key players that he can't implement that style. But that Liverpool game, that really was a sit up and pay attention moment in a season where we've been battered by injuries, a season where we haven't been able to get going, and a season where you could have got fucking flattened by them again, which has happened in the past. And nobody would have been overly, massively surprising on, yeah, well, look, it's happened before. Like, it is what it is. That game was massive. That not even the game, the performance. All these big games, they get hyped up and hyped up and hyped up. And outside of a fluke 7-0, which we'll erase from the memory, the vast majority of these big games against Liverpool, Arsenal, Chelsea, City get hyped up all week or 2 weeks by the likes of Sky Sports. They turn out to be a damn squib. They turn out to be a 0-0 or 1-0, a shitty match, both teams afraid to go at each other. That was one of the best football matches I've seen in a long, long time. Two teams just going absolute hammer and tongs. And it ended up in a cracker, last-minute 4-3 win. If you can see the potential to play that type of football, given the fact that he is still missing a lot of key players, and I know it's only a cup game, but it is a cup game that saw us go to Wembley against one of our biggest rivals, if not arguably our biggest rival in England. It's a big statement from Ten Hag, I think, and it might be in the background, him kind of saying to everybody, hang on a second, lads, relax. I'm still here. This is what I can do when I get a chance to do it. Don't fucking write me off just yet. Matt, what is that a fair assessment?
Well, yeah, but it wasn't just the performance of the players as well as the performance of Ten Hag. His tactics completely and utterly stymied Klopp. He didn't have a clue what he was doing. I read something, it was on Twitter, pointed it out, and when he freshened up our right-hand side, I think it was our right-hand side, wasn't it, or left, whichever one, Klopp then had to then change how they were set up, so he then freshened up whichever the corresponding side was. And then when he was throwing Harry Maguire up front, he had to think to overcome that. So he's not just sending a message out to the fans and the dissenters, it's to other managers as well, that you've only seen me play one way. Well, hang on a second. Now, actually, I've got quite the arsenal, even with the lack of players that we've got, to the point where, and it's not looked over as much as it should be, we beat Liverpool 4-3 with 2 recognised defenders on the pitch, and only one of them was playing in defence. And it kind of flies in the face of the losing the dressing room, not playing for him. Bruno Fernandes, I think that was probably his best captain's performance as captain. Just before the Rashford chance at the end of the normal time, they tried to launch a counter-attack, and he was the last man heading the ball out. And then he played centre-half for 35, 40 minutes on probably not even one leg.
I'm not going to give Dale a chance to answer this because he doesn't deserve it. But recently, Dale basically said sell Bruno Fernandes. I think Bruno Fernandes listens to Strettycast, because if there was ever a performance that gave 2 fingers to Dale O'Donnell and said, hang on a second, buddy, hang on a second, I'm not part of your 5 you're building your team around, do me a favour, dropped into centre half and gave an absolute mega performance. Go on, Dale, I'll give you a chance. Go on.
I love being proven wrong. I love it being proved wrong by United players when I say someone that, is not performing well and they come out and prove me wrong. I absolutely love it. But what I will say is, and to his credit, a lot of people point to the game against Liverpool when Bruno had, didn't behave best when we were getting trashed and didn't lead by example and that. I wonder will people be as quick to put up his, I suppose, the way he carried himself in that game, being asked to go centre back and fill out a role to contribute to a huge win. I think that's where we've seen some of the reason why Bruno was picked as captain, availability. And you can see, I guess, he's a player that the manager can trust. Now, it doesn't change the fact that his performances, or he hasn't been as influential this season. And I do also believe that's because of workload. He's played massive amount of minutes over the last 2 years. Again, my fear does stem from when that's going to take a massive toll on him, because he's still playing all those games for Portugal. I know he got a rest for the second international this time around. He got sent back to Manchester early. But he's going to be going to the Euros this summer, and you can be guaranteed he's going to be playing every game for Portugal, and he's not going to get the break that he needs. So they're just the fears that I still have. But yeah, look, Bruno proved me wrong. Egg on my face. Long may that continue.
It's one of those natural things with football fans, to be fair, and you're right. People are very quick to criticise and very slow to praise. Bruno gets absolutely pelters, and he does get hammered by a lot of people. But like you said, when he does put a performance like that, he probably doesn't get the credit he does deserve for it. Fabiola, that Liverpool game, as somebody with a massive interest in the youth coming through and academy products and what have you, leaving out Kobbie Mainoo, because we'll get to him in a minute, he's our next topic, just how happy were you to see the likes of Garnacho and his compadres coming through in that game and standing up and be counted, and exactly how important were they to the side, and how important can you see the likes of those academy products coming through, going through the rest of the season, going further to next season? Are you absolutely buzzing to see these guys coming through?
Absolutely. Actually, one of the things that I like the most regarding that game is the fact that no matter how hard the other academies try, they will probably never reach United's level on comparing with the fact that how important they are for the team. A few months ago, I saw something on Twitter regarding a comparison between the Chelsea and the United Academy. And actually, it was pretty funny because it was close to that Garnacho goal against Everton, which was absolutely amazing. And it really showed how important and the amount of work that the managers, the coaches put on this academy, and actually want these lads to succeed and actually make their path on the first team very smooth. And with Garnacho, I think it has been clear from the very start. There was no way that he was not making it into the team. The fact that we had to fight with other academies to sign him, and we actually got him, it's a sign that the amount of work that everyone puts in there. However, I do have to mention that one of the things that makes this academy very important is that if you get a game, you're hungry for more. And especially against Liverpool, this was that was the pinnacle of everything. Meaning that once you give your everything, you're absolutely knocking on the door to look for more. And I think that this is one of the lessons that they teach them, definitely. And having Kobbie run around these Liverpool midfielders and seeing how he excelled, well, that's basically what this academy is bringing up. You check the under 18s and also the under 21s. You will see very soon other names that will come up to Eric Ten Hag's door, hopefully, and actually say, yeah, I want to be just like Kobbie. And this is the principle that we see in this academy, and surely it will not be so long till we have the next one.
Fabiola, I just want to ask you about another young player that's kind of dipped into the team recently, and it looks like Eric Ten Hag is trying to convince this player to commit his future to United. Omari Forson, how good is he? And do you think he's a player that could be competing for one of those roles in our front three?
I think, given the treatment that Eric has been giving to the youngsters, even with their training sessions, and I know that he also has been attending a few games to watch some of the players. I think that Omari Forson definitely has the X factor to make it most likely, because in his contract situation, I don't think that a manager would actually come forward and pick him up against another player in his position. So I think he fell a bit off radar because of the other upcoming youngsters. For example, Garnacho has taken all the attention on that part. But I think that he will definitely compete for a place in this team, and once he has the chance to prove it again, I think that he will do it. Definitely, he will do it. I know that he comes off a bit like everyone is a bit skeptical regarding the academy lads, but I think that he will make it. One of my top bets, actually.
You're saying with the skepticism of Forson, or the academy lads, I'm not entirely convinced Forson will be 100% a starter. Do you reckon that he's going to end up being more of a squad player, or do you think he could be a starter in the future?
Well, to be honest, one of the things that I'd say is that he will make a squad player, definitely. But if he is up to it, which I know he is, I think that he will actually compete for that place.
Isn't it also a matter of, you're talking about Forson having that X factor and having that talent, but when you get into the first team, it's then up to these players to take their opportunity. Like we've seen it so many times with Pellistri, for instance, right? He got a few appearances this season, and we know he's a talented footballer. But when he got the opportunity in United shirt, you can't say he took his opportunity with both hands. Then you look at Amad Diallo before the international break. Well, there's not a better way to take your opportunity than scoring a winner in the last minute against Liverpool. And you'd have to say he will get more opportunities as a result of that.
One thing I'll say about Omari Forson, which maybe I'm not making an excuse for the kid, because obviously he's got something. Eric Ten Hag is well known for bringing through youth players, and he's very strong in his opinion of introducing youth players to the side. I think Forson got unlucky in the game that he came into. That particular game, we didn't play well, and those around him didn't play well. So he suffered as a result of that. Very hard for a young lad to come into a side, and if it's a game where pretty much the rest of the team falls apart and doesn't play well for 90 minutes, very hard to expect a young kid to come into the side and be the one to light up the stage. I mean, he's like, let's go back to like a basic human level. Imagine the nerves he has putting on that shirt and starting that game, and all of a sudden everyone around him has an absolute stinker. He's not going to light up the sky. Fab, can I just ask you on one more player while we're on the academy players? There's a lot of Twitter rumors going around. One in particular was quite humorous because it built up a story that didn't exist around Harry Amos. Now, it's obviously because our situation in that position hasn't been great. You've watched Harry Amos far more than I have. And to be fair, it's quite, I suppose it's funny in a way that we're looking at players coming through and we see them finally hit the first team and we see what they're capable of. You've been watching these kids a lot longer than we have. You've been seeing them come through. So you're probably not as surprised as we are to see them make it or to see what levels they can get to. Harry Amos is a kid that's been talked about an awful lot. Can you tell us about Harry Amos, what his potential future in the side can be, and just how good is he?
Okay, so yeah, I remember that rumor that went on Twitter, and actually, I was one of the few to fall for it because I actually thought that he had made the team since we had issues on the fullback situation. But one thing I should say, and probably this goes for Omari Forson and every other academy graduate or product that will come up through the academy ranks, I think that one of the issues is that United fans expect a lot too soon. They need the player to excel in his first game, or even make everything about him, even though he might have played some sort of good and probably decent, but not as good to appeal their egos. For Harry Amos, I think that the talent is there. And the reason why we are having so much talk about him, even today, I actually saw a few edits regarding him and how he could actually fill in Luke Shaw's shoes. But I think that we need to wait. On this case, we need to wait. He has the talent for it, but I don't think that we should rush players into the first team just because we need to cover up. It would probably destroy the player's future, and we have seen this with Louis van Gaal. I think the way that many players were rushed, it went wrong. I don't want especially Harry Amos to go wrong. It would ruin a potential fullback of 10 to 15 years, guaranteed.
Fabiola, can I put something else to you just while we're on the topic? And I do enjoy talking about this. We're talking about academy products coming through the side and people making it, not making it, and the impression they have and grabbing their chance. Would it be fair to say the level, and again, we won't focus too much on Kobbie because we're going to come to him, but the level that Kobbie Mainoo has brought so quickly to the side, and when he came into the side, how immediately he delivered, and the level that Alejandro Garnacho has brought to the side, and obviously because of the position he plays in, he's going to get more headlines and more focus and more attention because he's scoring goals and he's creating assists. Have Alejandro Garnacho and Kobbie Mainoo, have they set the bar so high in their introduction to the first team that academy players coming through now are going to look and go, shit, like that's the level I have to get to. Like they've hit the ground running. They've been absolutely phenomenal since they've come into the first team. Like it takes players an awful lot longer to integrate into the first team. They get blooded in cup games, League Cup games, little 15 minutes appearance here and there. Garnacho and Kobbie Mainoo have literally come into the side and gone, this is my position. I now own this. I'm good enough. They have the character, they have the persona, they have the attitude, they have that little bit of arrogance. Now, I'm not saying they're arrogant in their personality, but that bit of arrogance that you associate with Manchester United, that bit of flair, that little extra bit special. Is that now setting a bar for future players coming through to think we really need to raise our game? And on the plus side of that, is it giving them more of an impetus to go, that's the level I need to get to make it? And again, as Dale said, Facundo Pellistri came in, he didn't hit the level that the likes of Garnacho has. Is it now a case of when you come into the first team as a kid for the immediate future, solely down to Alejandro Garnacho and Kobbie Mainoo, that the level has to be that high to make the impression to say, yes, I am part of this team and I belong here, especially to the type of fans who don't actually follow their progress through the academy and just get to see them for the first time when they come in. Like Omari Forson came in, looked all right, looked pretty good, and then didn't look well, but as I said, didn't look well because the rest of the team played so poorly. Is the bar raised that high now for people coming through?
Probably in terms of fans' expectations, probably yes, which could do also harm, but also good on terms of the level that it should be expected from academy products to actually kick in the first team. Now the problem would be that not many would actually see this as a chance to get in, meaning that many would get disappointed because of course everyone wants to be part of the first team and stuff like that. However, I think it has done more good to the situation, because they are basically what the standard should be. So if you want to make the place your own, that spot, that position, well, you should get into it, and they have done it. So no better example on that. However, I would like to say that not every academy product, and as we have seen with various United players, have the same path on the first team. Probably not a fan favorite in here, but Scott McTominay didn't actually make a great impression at first. I think definitely he had trouble, of course, settling down, even played at different positions due to the manager's requests. However, he has remained as an important squad player. So I think that in this particular case, it's not that you have to excel and actually get that position your own. Being a squad player at United is actually a pretty good standard for an academy product. So I don't think that this whole Kobbie and Alejandro Garnacho situation, they're one of a kind talents. Let's face it. And if they stay humble but arrogant at the same time, I think that he will everyone would do all right. So I don't think that they have harmed more. They have set a path and an example on how to do things, and this is great.
When you mention Scott McTominay in this podcast, you're speaking to, well, one of us for certain, one of his biggest fans in the world. And to be fair, Fab, we've spoke about McTominay in our Stretty News group chat for many, many years, and the two of us, rightly so, have sang his praises and always backed him. Even when things weren't going great for him, we've always said stick with him. So Scott McTominay will always get the thumbs up from this podcast if I'm involved in it. Right, I think it's time to talk about something that has blown the entire football world away at the moment. The 10th of January 2023, named as a starter in Old Trafford for the Carabao Cup quarter-final as Manchester United beat Charlton 3-0 at the age of 17, Robbie with a K, Kobbie Mainoo. Now, we'd all heard rumours and bits of talk about Kobbie Mainoo coming through. And to be fair, it was one of those academy products that we had heard about. It wasn't like it came out of nowhere. We'd heard this talk about this kid coming through, and a lot of talk about him, a lot of expectations, and they reckoned he's going to make it. He made his Premier League debut the 19th of February 2023 as a second-half substitute at home to Leicester City. He went on, made his first Premier League start 26th November 23. Pre-season set him back massively. A pre-season where people started to get excited about Kobbie Mainoo, and Kobbie Mainoo started to become a topic that people wanted to talk about. He was very, very unlucky with an injury, and I think it's fair to say that Erik ten Hag was preparing to have Kobbie Mainoo in his side, or at least in his squad, going into the season. He made his Champions League debut the 29th of November 23 away to Galatasaray, a game I was lucky to be at myself, in a welcome to hell situation. A kid coming into that type of a cauldron of noise. When I say I was there, they measure noise and decibels, and on construction sites where I work myself, they give a certain level where you need to wear hearing protection because it's bad for your hearing. The level of decibels in that ground that night was far, far beyond that. It was so loud, my eardrums were vibrating. It was literally the loudest I've ever heard any noise in any football ground. Insanely intimidating. Kobbie Mainoo did not find it that way. 28th of January, first Manchester United goal against Newport. Let's fast forward. Scored that cracker against Wolves. He wins United's Player of the Month. He wins Premier League Goal of the Month. This is all in such a rapid time. This is in the matter of a mere few single-digit months. He gets looked aside for a position in the England senior squad in this international break initially, and there was talks, he's going to be added to the under-21 side. Pardon my French for a moment, but he ripped Liverpool a new arsehole. He danced around their players. I mentioned it in one of the last podcast. I was watching the game. I stupidly, and this is something I'm going to regret for a long time, I stupidly gave my ticket away to a friend as I couldn't travel. And watching the game on telly, I saw this guy dance through a few players and said, that looks like Kobbie Mainoo, but surely not. And yes, it sure was. The kid oozes composure. He oozes calm. He oozes maturity. I don't think I'm 40 this year. I've watched a lot of football. I've watched a lot of kids come through this academy, and Manchester United's academy spits out product after product after product. I don't think I've ever seen any kid come into this side with such maturity, such composure, such calm. A kid that can come in beside Casemiro and give him a bollocking and Casemiro to take it on the chin. Not only did Gareth Southgate realise the error in his ways, and even though I was a bit gutted because I can't stand any player playing international football, and particularly England with the treatment we've had for Manchester United players over time, for Kobbie himself, it must have meant the world. He got brought in. Not only did he make his debut, I believe he got man of the match. Kobbie Mainoo has set the world on fire. And now, of course, because there's rival teams with average or above average players who aren't getting looked at the same way Kobbie Mainoo is, because Kobbie Mainoo has only been on the scene for a wet week, people are saying he's overhyped. It's too much talk about him. Before I get into any of our guests tonight, it's not overhyped. And that's a genuine, honest, straight out fact. It's not overhyped at all. I've watched Kobbie Mainoo. I've watched every minute of football he's played in, and he has literally blown me away. It's phenomenal what he's done since he come in. He's come into a side that's underperforming, under-firing, lacking players left, right and centre, injuries all over the place. He's literally came into that side and just quietly gone, I've arrived, this is me, I'm Kobbie Mainoo. He sat on that advertising hoarding in what they call the baby trinity. And again, they've said if it doesn't amount to anything, it won't count. But if it does, it'll be an iconic picture. Fabiola, I think it'd be unfair to open this up to anybody else, bar yourself. You've tracked Kobbie Mainoo's career from the academy to become a man of the match for England. Tell us about Kobbie, what you know of his personality, what he went through in the academy, how he developed as a player, and why is the name on everybody's lips right now in football, Kobbie Mainoo?
First of all, I'd actually give a shout out to a tweet that was like 8 years ago. So if you actually call a player that has been excelling over the years and still calling him overrated, well, that's probably just opposition fans being jealous of not having a Kobbie Mainoo to their academy. That's basically putting those rumors, those chats to an end. Regarding his development, I don't think that there is much of a surprise, especially on the academy coaches on the way that he has evolved. One of the things that should be mentioned is that he was part of the FA Youth Cup run success that we won at Old Trafford against 3-1. So that's not a shocker at all. And if you check the team, there are talented players there that could actually make it into professional football. And staying into the Kobbie Mainoo stat, I think that what people don't understand is that he shows a level of being humble but arrogant at the same time, having that sense of maturity while playing in midfield, which I think has always been with him. I've watched numerous games of him where you could say that the man of the match or the praises have gone to the strikers for scoring, but the one that actually kept United into the game and on the other hand actually delivering some beautiful passes, that's been on Kobbie. And of course he has a lot to work, but I think that one of the reasons why he caught the attention was due to the working hard part, and also on the other hand excelling and making the academy coaches say that he's definitely the next one to go into the first team, which he did. And regarding the hype that he's getting for the England part, I even said a few times that I'm kind of worried about the overexposure that he's getting in the media. The thing is that it's not easy for a teenager basically to go into the international break on his debut and get man of the match. That shows excellency. But on the other hand, as I said, I'm a bit worried because it harms young players. It has happened to various of them, but I think that he will probably be safe on that part. And as a club, United should definitely do a bit more on protecting the young players, even on international break. And Kobbie is the case, I think. But I wouldn't be too worried on that aspect, rather than him keeping other fans busy talking about him, not having him on the team. So let's be honest. I don't think I've seen a much better player in that academy for a long time, and that says a lot because I'm a big fan of all of them, and really hope that most of them make it into the professional football, into first teams. Well, it may not be United at all, but Kobbie Mainoo is actually the definition of talent itself.
Fabiola, for someone who I know takes an interest in academy football to the next level, for you to give him that type of plaudits and to give him that title or label saying he's the one, that's a massive statement, because obviously you've watched so many footballers come through, and you've obviously had high hopes for certain players who haven't made it, or as you say, they mightn't have made it at United, but they've gone on to have a good career. And that's always, look, it's part of our academy system. We've always produced talent, whether the talent is at the level of playing for Manchester United or not, or maybe it has to go to another side or drop down a division. There's no shame in leaving an academy and going having a professional career at Championship. I mean, I'd give my left arm to play football at League Two level, not to mind playing Championship football or League One. So we produce so many academy products that go on to have a great career in football, be it at United or not. Dale, Kobbie Mainoo, I always relate it back to Adnan Januzaj, because on a personal level, when Januzaj came in, and it was a time we needed a star, it was a time we needed something to lift things, and he did. Credit to Adnan Januzaj, he did. He came in and he gave us something to cheer about and something to get excited about. It's very difficult. Sorry, I'll rephrase it. It's much easier for an academy prospect to be blooded into a team in an Alex Ferguson situation where you've got 10 other top-class players around you, seasoned pros, talent, used to winning week in, week out. You can take out a player and you can hypothetically, or in inverted commas, weaken the side with an academy product, and they can come in and they're not as at danger of falling flat in their face, because they're going to get dragged along by those around them. The results probably won't go wrong. We're not at that level, and we haven't been for many years. So coming into a side at the moment, particularly this season, maybe last season not as much, but particularly this season, the knives have been out in the media. Rival fans are on our back, even United fans, by and large. We've had so many people on Eric Ten Hag's back all season. We've had so many people calling and baying for blood. To come into a side that's underperforming and a side that's been absolutely hammered by injuries is not easy. What does it say about, obviously we've seen Garnacho, but let's stick to Kobbie. What does it say about Kobbie Mainoo, who strikes me as an unassuming, relatively quiet kid, not into the flash, not into the social media bullshit, not into all the big showing off. He just seems like a really nice young lad with his head on his shoulders. Just exactly how much does it say about him as a person at that age to come into an underperforming side and do what he's done? Because hypothetically, Dale, he's probably saved us somewhere from 60 to 100 million. If you're realistic about what it would cost to buy a Kobbie Mainoo, or to buy someone with that prospect, or even to buy someone that's already at that level and coming into the side now, he saved us an absolute fortune. What's it say about the player himself? And as a kid, what does it say about the kid to be able to do that?
It tells you he's a gem, but also the characteristics you named out, his behaviour, even watching him on the pitch and how assured he is, he's so mature for his age. You look at Garnacho and Kobbie coming into the team, and you can both appreciate both of them are outstanding prospects in the game, could reach the very, very top. The difference I seen between the two is, I'm not taking anything away from Garnacho. As I said last week, he's the star of the team at the moment. But when I look at Kobbie, I see a player that he plays like a seasoned pro that's like 28, 27, and he's playing such a demanding position in midfield, and he's taken so many responsibilities. Like you said, coming into a team that's struggling with injuries, struggling for lack of leaders, struggling for results, yet he's come into the team and so quickly we're relying on him for performances. You know, he's one of the first names in the team sheet. He's a player now that if he's missing for a big game, we're then thinking, fuck, we're without Kobbie. The same way last season we were without Casemiro at times. We'd worry about that. Kobbie is something else. And I'm trying in the past few weeks to kind of profile what kind of player he is. And I'm not trying to build comparisons, but the Liverpool game and the cameo against Brazil and the start that he had against Belgium, a bit like a Luka Modric, Andrea Pirlo, in the sense that he's so much technical quality, but he could play as a 6 or an 8. He's he could play really any midfield role. And that's why I'm so excited. But the main reason why I'm excited by Kobbie is the aura around him, the way he carries himself. And I hope that continues, because Fabiola mentioned being worried about the exposure. I will be worried about that too. And it's only based on how we've seen how the English media have jumped on Manchester United players whilst playing for England. That's the only worry I have. The only worry, because that can affect anybody.
Before we move on from the academy, and our next topic is going to be Brentford, of course, I want to give Fabiola a quick chance to discuss something. So, Manchester United, the academy, have implemented the exact title I'm not going to claim to know, but let's call it a care program or a future care program. Fabiola, this program that the academy and Manchester United as a club have implemented to look after players and their aftercare when they leave the academy or when they move on from the club or they leave football. Can you give us a bit of information on what this system gives to these players, these academy products, and what benefit it gives to them in their life after football, whether they make it or not? It's obviously something that United have put a lot of focus on and put a lot of work into. It's really, really good to see, like even just to see that they're aware that they need to do this. But talk us through this program they have and give us some detail on it before we move on, please.
So the news came, I think, around November regarding this alumni program that Manchester United had implemented on their academy products. It's basically a system that you could actually be taken care of in your life, as you explained, in your life after football, which I think it's a good way to kickstart your career on something else, maybe even managerial, being a coach or anything else. But this is what actually makes this club and this whole system as good as it is. So for many of these academy products, it hasn't gone very well. For example, given the likes of Callum Gribben, he hasn't had the chance to kickstart his career as he wanted to, and he was one of the former academy products that actually were in the first initial phases of this alumni program that was kickstarted in November 1st, and then as I know of, it has started with new groups in January. And what it helps is that it shows that this club is more than just football. It has a perfectly clear path on helping you to get on with life if stuff haven't gone well. Because they just don't teach you to be a good footballer and actually kickstart your career there. But on the other hand, also be a decent human being, and you can excel at something rather than not just being football. And I sing the praises on this one to Nick Cox and everyone involved on this, because I think that one of the most important things that we know and learn regarding the academy is that you need to take care of the players. They're just teenagers, so they also they also need to do stuff that are outside of football, and I think this is one of those stuff that the club has actually done in a good way. I know that I say lots of times that this club doesn't care about many things, but on this part they actually have done a great job, and I'm really happy that we're actually doing this.
Just on that, to add to it, you mentioned something very important about how, a lot of people feel there's people working at the club that aren't working the way they should, or have what we care about at their best interest. But listening to, and someone you mentioned, listening to Nick Cox on a few recent podcasts, he was on Talk of the Devils, and he was recently on the United We Stand podcast, and listening to him speak about how the importance of the academy and how he views it and stuff, it was reassuring, and it kind of made me think, we actually do have some people at the club that have been there for a few years that do care about how they carry out their jobs. And with new owners in and recruitment changing and different people coming in and out, after listening to a few shows that Nick Cox has done, I hope he's part of the future of Manchester United, because listening to the way he spoke about how he dealt with Garnacho when he was coming to Manchester during COVID, during lockdown, and the difficulties behind that, and also the way he speaks about Kobbie, and how he speaks about if players don't make it at United, the importance of building a career for him, and so on. He's someone, I'm delighted you mentioned him. He deserves massive credit.
Your podcast episode you're talking about, the athletics one with Nick Cox, that was like, I enjoy all the athletic podcasts. They're really good. That was one of my favorites because I think it gave a lot of people an insight into the academy that a lot of us don't get. It gave us a chance to sit back and listen and learn. Not just like, we all just see these products coming through. Our products is an awful thing to call players, but we see these players coming through, our academy products as we call them. But we don't really, unless you put in massive interest like Fabiola does, you don't really see or hear about what they go through to make it, or what they go through and don't make it, or what way they go through and how they develop, and how the club looks at them, and how the club tries to develop them, and what way the club goes about it, what kind of mentality it puts into them. It's absolutely brilliant to hear it. I'm actually, funnily enough, I'm in the middle of sussing out an article where I've spoke to one of our good friends, Nathan Thomas. He made comment in a podcast recently about Kobbie Mainoo and at the trip to Munich this year. And I've been talking to the MMMF, the Manchester United Munich Memorial Foundation, on this topic as well. And they've made big reference to the academy and how the academy is, how they focus an impetus on the history of the club and teaching young kids about what this club's about, where the club came from, how it began, what it went through. And obviously with Munich being a big part of this history, they get to learn about Munich, and I should have a pretty good story coming out quite soon about that. Matt, do you want to jump in quickly?
Yeah, it's just it's good that we do that, and it's good that we focus our attention on the history and everything, and it goes all the way back, and it kind of goes back to something you said before. I was just thinking about it when you were saying about Mainoo and everyone raising the bar. It jumps back to sort of something Gary Neville said in the Class of '92 documentary that just sticks in my mind. And he said about watching Ryan Giggs and how he looked at him and said if that was the level that we all needed to get to, then he's got some work to do. And I think that's also done through the academy.
That's exactly the point I was trying to make earlier, Matt. I'm not so much saying it's a bad thing. If Alejandro Garnacho and Kobbie Mainoo have come in and they've produced that level of performance and that impact into the side, just as exactly as what you're saying, Neville said it about Giggs. If that's the level we need to get to, we need to raise our game. I've always said competition breeds excellence. If that's the kind of thing they're seeing coming through, they must be absolutely chomping at the bit to go out and prove how good they can be and what kind of impact they have. It's exactly what I was trying to say earlier. So you hit the nail on the head, and it goes back to that time when Neville came through and the Class 92 came through. They saw Giggsy coming through and they were like, holy shit, this guy is absolutely unbelievable. We're going to have to be unbelievable to have any kind of impact or any similar level of impact and to belong on the same pitch. I mean, you can think about it. Go back to being a kid yourself playing football. You always looked around the pitch when you were playing underage and you were like, he's the best player and he's really good. And Jesus, I hope I can do myself justice on the pitch now the weekend, whatever position you're playing, just so you can feel like you fit in with the crew. Or even when you got to the stage of you were hitting 14, 15, 16 and you made the step up to like to senior or junior soccer in Ireland, you started playing with adults. Again, you got those nerves in your chest or your belly, and you were thinking, the first thing I've got to achieve here is proving to these people that I belong here and that I fit in with these, and that I actually have a role to play and can offer something. So it obviously gives them the initial, I need to feel like I belong to the side. But also when you're seeing that level of performance, you're going, shit, I don't just need to fit in. I need to prove myself big time.
And it shows that the hard work will be rewarded as well. Obviously, Mainoo and Garnacho have worked hard to get themselves into this position to stand out from the crowd. So it shows them that if you put the effort in and work at it, then that's where you're going to get to. I think Forsen is also another good example of it, that he's a bit of a rough diamond now, needs polishing around the edges, but he knows that if he works hard and polishes those edges, he's going to get his opportunities.
Just a quick one, Fabiola, before we move on to probably a few questions that we have. Nick Cox on that podcast with The Athletic spoke about the under-18s team this season, which is, everyone's talking about the run they were on. I think it was a 14 games, correct me if I'm wrong, that they went on a winning streak. But during that run, Nick Cox referred to it on The Athletic podcast and kind of said that he wasn't too happy about it, that they were winning so many games on the trot and that they were kind of finding it easy. And he spoke about his kind of role and responsibility, or the coaches too, of creating, not barriers, but creating challenges for these players, maybe calling up players from younger groups to start games and, creating obstacles for the lads and different challenges. Tell us a bit more about that under-18s team. We haven't touched on it yet, but it has been bringing up a lot of conversation this year, or perhaps excitement.
Yeah, I think that the under-18s group has actually brought a lot of attention to this fan base due to the fact on how they've been winning constantly and how they actually excelled and scored a lot of goals, which I think that they have done in the recent years various times, but people were actually more focused on the success that City had. So this time the focus is on us. However, one thing that you mentioned regarding the challenges that he has given to them, I think that he already has done this, because if you look at the side that actually lost to City before we went on international break, that was a pretty young team. So what we have done what they have done in here actually is that they have moved a few players to loan have sent a few players on loan. Meanwhile, some of the under-18s have moved to the under-21s, which actually have a pretty tough league this year due to the format changes. They do this every year, so not a good thing about youth development. But I think that what the group of the under-18 stands most for is that the way that they solve their situations. Of course, there will be challenges, and I think that one of the key points that Nick Cox was trying to make was regarding that loss on the FA Youth Cup, which I think that we would have had a brilliant run, but I think it was a stump. It was something that was clearly unexpected, at least that early on the stages. So I think that there are many key players on that side that I should actually make headlines very soon. But overall, I think that we have a pretty good under-18s team, and soon we will see on how they will get on the under-21s. If you ask me about specific players, I could actually be more, I don't know, specific.
Go on. Give us one. Give us one to watch out for.
No, no, I'm not going to do this because I think it will pile up on the pressure on the player. So I don't like this type of thing. As I've mentioned before, it's not fair on the player. No, it's not.
That's fair.
Fabiola, I was literally going to jump in just before we move to Brentford and ask you, and I'm going to stick the question to you, and I'm going to have to get an answer from you. You know the academy inside and out. Give me one name to watch out for. It might not be a name that everyone's talking about. It might not be the most popular name in the academy. give us one name to keep an eye on going forward. Not saying they're going to make it to world-class level, not saying they're going to make it to the top. Just give us one single name. That's all I want of who's going to make it and show us something.
I'm gonna say Shell Lacey, but I'm not gonna. But yeah, I did. Probably shouldn't have done this, but I think he'll come out right, and he will show definitely what he can do. It won't be easy because they already have some hype around him, but he'll probably do very well.
That's all I needed. Right, quickly, because time is against us. Brentford coming up. I'm going to start with you, Dale. Give me your prediction for Brentford. Score prediction, please.
Score prediction. I don't like giving these because I'm usually wrong. Say we're going to keep momentum going. We need to. Busy month coming up. 2-0 United.
Fabiola, prediction for Brentford.
I think we're winning 2-0.
Matt.
You won't get score prediction because we lose when I predict a score, but I'll predict a score rare. I think Hoyland will get at least one in a win.
No, need a score prediction. Sorry, putting you to
3-1.
3-1. Lovely. Right.
And yours?
Yeah, come
You're
on,
not,
guys.
you're not getting away with this.
2-0. Job done. Move on. One of our favourite parts of this podcast always, and one of the things we appreciate most, is our listeners sending in questions to answer. I'm going to open it up with a topic that we've pretty much talked about for a good period of this episode, but a very relevant one. Aaron B on Twitter asks, how important is it that we sign Kobbie Mainoo to a long-term deal this summer? The kid has it all. The sky's the limit. Any other midfielder should be complimenting him and letting him play to his strengths, in my opinion. So, Dale, I'll open it up to you. How important is it that we tie him down to a long-term contract, and any other midfielder, I'm assuming he means even people coming in, should be brought in with the view of complimenting him, not him complimenting them?
Yeah, it's important that we tie Kobbie down. And I've already said that I think we should build a team around him being one of the players that we should build a team around. But we also need to be careful. We've spoken for some amount of time about the contract situation at United and how young players are on astronomical wages. And I know we're living in that day and age. We want to keep our best young players and we have to, compete with some of the wages elsewhere. But then part of me feels this is Manchester United and we are among the top elite clubs in the world. I want to see incentivized contracts and realistic ones too. Like, you can't just turn around after this brief spell and hand Kobbie 200,000 a week, because that's nonsensical. He's 18 years of age. We have to try and manage him and maybe give him assurances that here's your contract in the summer, an improved one. You do well again in a year or two time, there'll be a path for you to get a better deal. That's the way it should work. I think we need to be careful about it, but in my mind, yes, it has to be a priority to tie him down long term, maybe with a plan in place. Don't rush into it and give him big bucks. He'll make his money. He'll make his money if he's looked after.
Fabiola, we've had a situation at the club where we're handing out contracts and we've mismanaged players for so long now. Is it time to try and turn the tide and change the mindset behind the contracts we give out? Like Dale has said, incentivized contracts, try and make players, I won't say work for their money, but essentially earn the right to get on the big bucks. But obviously they've also got to look at the fact that Kobbie Mainoo has come out of nowhere and has just got man of the match for England. It's obviously a difficult negotiation and a difficult discussion to have with a player's agent who has just lit the world on fire. Again, you'd forgive the kid not to expect a big contract, but Fabiola, how do you view his contract negotiations going this summer?
I don't know, but I actually have a pretty straightforward setup on this one. He will sign that contract because he actually loves playing. So I don't think that there will be any issues. But the issue will be with, I think, with the hype that will go around him on the summer, which I don't like, given that he will probably be selected for England as well. But I think, yeah, he will definitely get that contract signed. We've had the talks, as I mentioned, with regarding the Omari Forson situation. I don't think that Eric would actually hand out debuts and playing and minutes to players that he doesn't see the future. So it's pretty straightforward. I don't see any problems on that.
And I'm going to throw you a curveball because it's obviously hard to follow up the same question with what we've covered. you're in charge of contract negotiations for Manchester United. You're trying to change the mindset. You're trying to change what's going on at the club. And obviously with Sir Jim coming in and Ineos coming in, they're trying to change things and how they're being dealt with. With that in mind, Kobbie Mainoo's team come in for contract negotiations and they demand a massive wage based on how illustrious he's been already. Do you just basically say, yeah, I've got to give it to you? Or what's the play for Manchester United in this situation? Because we have to take into account the fact that he's just gone from, I won't say zero to hero, but he's come out of nowhere and he's absolutely nailed his position. He's just made Gareth Southgate eat his words in not selecting him, backflip, and then he comes on and gets man of the match. It's a hard situation for anyone trying to do these negotiations, but if you're in charge and he goes, I want X amount a week and that's it, what are you saying to him?
You've fucked me over here, haven't you? It's a tough one with this. I think in normal, I think maybe perhaps if it was Garnacho, I think it would be a no. You're getting what you're given simply because we've got numbers in wide positions and I think they're easy to come across.
You said about Garnacho, right? And if it's him, you'd say no. Let me counter that with, we all pretty much know that the path for Garnacho, although we hope it doesn't happen, is he's going to play for United, he's going to become brilliant, he's already brilliant, he's going to become better and better, and Real Madrid are going to come knocking at the door. Is there not a massive threat that if you say to Garnacho, you're not having it, mate, he just goes grand and he pisses off to the likes of Barca or Real Madrid? Whereas with Mainoo, far more likely to swallow a lesser contract to stay at the club. I'm putting you on the spot here big time, but I'm enjoying.
Yeah, you've massively fucked me over again, haven't you? But there is, but at the same time, as I really like Garnacho, but I think you're more likely to be able to go out there and sign a winger who can be as good as him. Maybe I don't think Garnacho is going to be one of the best in the world in his position, whereas I think Mainoo is very much going to be one of the best in the world. I don't mean that I don't think Garnacho. Hang on a second, eager pair of beavers. I think that attacking positions are easier to find counterparts, if not slightly worse, if you're going to hit a level. Whereas if you've got a midfielder like Mainoo, they're worth the weight in gold. Like you said before, he's saving us 60, 80, 100 million pounds. You're looking at somebody like Bellingham to come in and be like Mainoo, aren't you?
We've had a few bombshells on this podcast over the times we've been doing it. I've probably dropped a few myself. The latest one from memory was Dale's Bruno situation. This one is an absolute Hiroshima. Garnacho is not going to be that level in his position. Now I can see Dale, obviously the listeners can't, but I can see him on camera and he's literally bouncing around his seat trying to get into this conversation. That's a bombshell. Dale, get in here and have your speak.
For starters, if United were to cash in on Garnacho and to say you go out and get someone as good, you're probably going to be spending over 80 million. I really think so. A player at 19 showing that potential, I think it would cost a fortune. The same way I think he would go for a fortune if we were to sell him in the summer. But just on the question that was asked as well, if Kobbie came with his people and demanded so much money, I'd have the same response for Kobbie and Garnacho. I think we have to think seriously about the mistakes we've made in the past with young players and even new signings giving them too much money. We have to stick by our guns. If Kobbie comes to the table and he wants X amount to play for Manchester United and he's demanding it up front, he's not going to play for any less, I think that's part of the problem. I think if you buy into that, that's exactly the problem the club keeps falling into. And now we're only talking hypothetically here about Kobbie. This isn't happening. And I don't think it will happen. I think Kobbie is someone that loves Manchester United. He's at the club he wants to be at. And hopefully won't have those problems. But I do think if anyone comes to the club with those demands at such an age, got to stick to your guns. Remember, Pogba did it. Ferguson looked at Pogba, was an amazing player in the academy. Won an FAU Cup, and we were talking about Pogba at the time maybe being our future midfielder. But it didn't happen because he didn't have the right mentality. The difference with Kobbie is it looks like he's a good skin. He's a good egg.
One of the differences back then, though, Dale, is Pogba was coming into a side that was a decent side. Are we not in a situation where we literally need these lads to move forward? Just throwing it out there that it's a different kind of a a situation for these guys, because I don't expect Kobbie Mainoo to come in and say I want 200,000 a week. I don't think he's that kind of guy whatsoever. I'm just spitballing and basically trying to wind Matt up. But I think we are in a situation where we need to keep these guys, because these are the kids we've said multiple times we're going to build around, and we need to keep them there. And I think you're right. I don't think Kobbie Mainoo is going to come in and say I want 100,000 a week. I don't think Garnacho, although he's probably more likely to do so, I don't think he's going to do it either.
Well, to Garnacho's credit, right? It's only something I noticed recently. He got a new contract. Was it last year? Was it before this season? He got his new deal, got a bumper deal, and the money he's on now, it's either the same amount of money that was offered to Pogba when he was 18 that he rejected, or it's less, right? So we're talking about maybe was that maybe 8 years ago? Football has changed a lot, and the amount of money the players get has changed a lot. Garnacho seems pretty happy at Manchester United. He could probably get more money if he really demanded it. So that's why I believe maybe there's a pattern in place where these players will get the rewards if they put the work in. And look, you're at the biggest club in the world. There's enough assurances for you.
Banger of a question, that one. Fabiola, do you want to jump in before we move on?
All I'm going to say is that neither Mainoo nor Garnacho are going to ask for that amount of money first. And the second part is that Garnacho is also a top player in his position. And people will eat their word. People will eat their words. No chance that he won't make it. He may follow the same path as Ronaldo, but if he moved from Atletico to United for a reason, and that's seeking for more. So no chance that he doesn't maintain that quality. Nope.
I apologize, but you've been spit roasted. That was brutal. That was pretty brutal. Let's move on.
If I'd known everyone else was going to answer it for me, I would have just left it that way.
The words of a defeated man. Moving on to the next topic. Dave Cleaver, a regular listener, has asked on Facebook, and it's a topic that's been covered quite a bit and quite publicly. Old Trafford, New Trafford, whatever you want to call us. We'll do this one quickly. Are we keeping Old Trafford, or is it a new build? Matt?
New build. I know that there's all the memories attached to Old Trafford, and we all have them, and there's no place like it. When you're driving up to it, or however you get in there, you see it cresting over the skyline. You still, no matter how many times you've been there, you get the goosebumps, and the walk up to it's brilliant. We're Manchester United. We need to be at the top of the tree, football wise and facilities wise. So I personally would keep as much of the old ground as we can, perhaps try and incorporate the Munich tunnel somewhere, the original one. But I'm a new ground man.
Fabiola, what's your feelings on this? Are we keeping Old Trafford, or renovating it, or do we go for a new build completely?
As someone that recently visited, I think that keeping it would be the best idea. No memories and no new stadium would actually compensate to that. We're not becoming commercial. That would be absolutely horrific. No, just no.
Neil O'Donnell, as a regular visitor to Old Trafford, talk to me. Are we knocking it down and building a new one, or are we keeping it and trying to do it up?
We definitely don't knock Old Trafford. I think we do need a new stadium, like Matt says, but there can be definitely something done about the current stadium. Use it in some sort of capacity, but definitely not throw it away. Now, for some time, I was totally against the idea of a new stadium because of being a traditionalist, and I don't think Old Trafford is quite as bad as what everyone makes it out to be. Look, it has its faults. It's not like a modern day stadium or whatever, but it's still fucking Old Trafford. It doesn't matter how many times I go there, I still get goosebumps when I walk out to my seat. So it's never going to lose that glass for me. But yeah, of course, you travel to some other stadiums and you see some of the facilities they have, and you think United being the biggest club in the world, and we don't really have that. Of course, you want a bit of it, but you don't want to lose certain aspects of Old Trafford. That's why I'd be kind of saying to people, be careful what you wish for, because we don't really know what we're going to get just yet.
This one is one that's played on my mind, and I've gone over and back numerous times, and you've hit the word that I wanted to use, traditionalist. And it's how I'd view myself. I always have been a traditionalist when it comes to football. The 4-3 against Liverpool recently, you saw the crowd, you saw the reaction, you saw what Old Trafford can be. And as you said, and I've said it numerous times, I still get goosebumps. Like walking down to the ground, no matter how many times I've been there, I still get that little flutter in my stomach, but more so when I walk up, get into the concourse, walk up the steps, and you see that pitch. Every single time I see that pitch, I get a feeling in my stomach that I can't match it with anything else. It's just this silly, nonsensical, weird feeling deep down of this is where I want to be. What bugs me is if we don't do up Old Trafford, and this is probably the wrong way to look at it, but if we don't do up Old Trafford, my kids will never see that. They'll never experience what I've experienced. Like, granted, I'm 40 this year. I haven't seen Old Trafford since it was 19, whatever, to go back 100 years. I've seen Old Trafford as what it is. But I want my kids to see that. I want my kids to experience what I've experienced growing up as a kid. And when I first started going, people talk about Old Trafford, and I know it has its faults. Okay, it does. They talk about Old Trafford like it's this fucking garden shed that's falling apart. It's not. It's far from it. They give Old Trafford this massive battering that it's this worst stadium in the world. It's far from it. It's far from it. Anybody who's ever stepped foot in Old Trafford will tell you straight out, it's a special place. It really is. And seeing the atmosphere and seeing the crowd, every single inch of that ground against Liverpool in that FA Cup tie was bouncing out of their seats. It was phenomenal. Players talked about it. Diogo Dalot spoke about it. He spoke to Andy Mitten after the game. He made reference to the fact that it's probably the best atmosphere he's seen there. Bruno spoke about it. Imagine every one of those players looking around after that game or during that game and seeing the place just bouncing. It's a special place. It always will be. I know people might say you need to build a new ground for this, that, and the other. I've been to Spurs' new ground. I've been to Arsenal's new ground. I've been to City's ground. I've been to all these modern grounds. They look lovely. They're not what a traditionalist would view as a football ground. Very hard to create that type of generic natural atmosphere in these types of grounds. I think I've finally swayed. I always said I wanted to keep Old Trafford renovated. I briefly fluttered with the idea of a new stadium. I think I'm going to have to stick to my guns on this one. I don't want to leave Old Trafford. It just simply for the fact there's too much there for me. And that's probably just from personal, selfish reasons. I want to be able to take my kids when they're old enough to come to the ground with me. I want them to see the ground I've grown up going to. I want them to experience what I've experienced. It's a keep it for me. And that's probably an answer that might not go down well with everybody, but it is a keep it for me. Matt, do you want to disagree with me?
Well, it's not so much a I still have the traditionalist in me and I agree with everything that everyone said about it, and I have that with Old Trafford. I just think that the way that the Tottenham Stadium is done, and then probably the Emirates with that, and then to a lesser extent the Etihad and West Ham, because they kind of moved into pre-built. I think what Ratcliffe would do in building something would be to speak to the fans, gauge what they wanted, and perhaps be more of a purpose-built kind of thing. So not have it as a soulless bowl, but keep as much of Old Trafford in New Trafford as is physically possible.
The only thing, now, again, this might sound arrogant, and because I'm a traditionalist football fan and I view myself that way, I've been to City's ground, and City laid a benchmark out on the pitch. Like, for the last few years, City have been the benchmark. There's no point denying it. As much as we hate the fuckers, we can't say they haven't been absolutely phenomenal. I can't stand their ground. I can't stand walking around it. It's just, it stinks of forced plastic football stuff. There's like, one of the things that stuck out massively the first time I went there, you're walking around the ground, there's a little stage for bands playing, and the band that was playing the day I was there was like this emo rock band, and I'm literally looking up going, what the fuck is wrong with these people? Like, who signed off on this? This is a shit show. You mentioned Spurs. I've been to Spurs a couple of times. A phenomenal stadium to look at it. It really is. It's a beautiful stadium. But like, Spurs are trying to create this nightclub atmosphere that they're forcing the fans' involvement with, like light shows with your phones and stuff. Give it a break. It's just not it. Go back to City again, the stadium announcer. He's trying to do the Bayern Munich thing, or like he's buying into this German thing of who scored the goal? Bernardo. The fellas inside in their press box screaming into a mic, trying to get people on side. It's pathetic. I can't accept it. Again, I've been to, like, say, Atletico Madrid's new ground, the the Valderrama or the Valderrama, whatever they call that ground. I can't remember the exact name, but phenomenal ground. Don't get me wrong. But again, I just can't see it being my week in, week out stadium because it's not football focused. I saw an interview, I think it was Sir Jim was talking about it recently, saying that you want to create more of an experience to keep more people around that area after the game. So you want to have more things to do after the game. I presume he's talking about like bars and whatnot. Again, I've been to West Ham's ground. I probably won't ever again go to West Ham away. I despise it. You walk through a Westfield shopping centre to get there. It's so sanitized. The West Ham fans don't like it, but obviously, as you said, they've gone into a pre-built ground. It wasn't purpose built for them. I fear if we do build a new stadium and we focus on this campus around the ground and stuff, it'll shit on top of everything we have as a traditional football club. I'd love to see us just renovate what we have and go with it. But Matt, you're chomping at the bit. Get in there.
I think that's where the fans come into play. We're not a bunch of plastic day tripping League Two supporting knobheads like the City fans. You know, they're a teeny tiny club with the delusions of grandeur and enjoying the success they're having now. So they're just going along with the ride. We as fans wouldn't have that. I think if there was to be the announcement of the who scored the goal thing, I think there might be riots. There'd at least be objects thrown at the announcer, because that's the biggest load of shit ever. Light shows are just shite. I don't think we'd allow that to happen, is my saving grace.
I reckon if we tried that announcer thing when we scored a goal, TRA would probably storm the pitch and kick the living shit out of everybody into the whole ground that was enabling that nonsense. Dale.
They could really take the piss and ask me to do the announcement, because with some of the names, I'd really struggle.
God help us if we played PSG or whoever he goes to next and Kylian Mbappe scores and Dale comes out and goes, and the score for them is Mbappe.
Mumbapu.
Right. Unfortunately, we're way over time. We're going to finish up with one last quick question. Steve on Twitter has asked, more than a window required to get the wholesale changes we need to the squad, but how many players can we realistically bring in this summer and how many move on? Not financial fair play, but from the point of view of enough changes without creating chaos for the manager. Up the fucking Reds, bald is best. Now, just to preface this question, you could relate this back to Todd Bowley in Chelsea, who just he just threw money everywhere he could, brought in a phenomenal amount of players. It hasn't stuck, it hasn't gelled, and you've a manager coming in going, what am I supposed to do with these 40 players that literally don't know each other? So being realistic, and Dale, myself, yourself, and Sean did this in the last episode or the episode before that. We named out players who could possibly leave in the summer, and there is an awful amount of players that could and probably should leave. In a realistic viewpoint, how many players can we get rid of and subsequently bring in without causing absolute mayhem? Tough question.
Well, I think in regard to players leaving, there's so many that just need to go. Regardless, there's players that just aren't good enough, do not meet the standard for where we need to be, and explain why year after year we're not competing for titles. United need to upgrade some of these players. They need to bite the bullet, and I think they will have to do that this summer by letting players go for valuations that the club may not agree with, and we have to take a loss on players. As for bringing players in, I think it's important to remember that Ten Hag has already started building his squad. And we know we haven't really seen it this season with injuries, but, Licha, Onana, some of the young players he's brought into the squad, Highland, there's a bit of that squad building already. So I think you bring in 4 to 5 players. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to cause, carnage. I think that what's going to cause carnage is continuing to keep the players that just aren't good enough.
Fabiola, based on what Dale has just said, and obviously you can give your own side of it, but bringing in 5 players in the summer, it's quite a lot of players to bring into a squad. If we take it that obviously we're going to be losing quite a number of players, contracts, aging players that aren't at the club currently, like Jadon Sancho, who's probably going to see the door. What do you think? Is there a balance we can get there, or are we looking at a summer where we bring in a lot of players, hope it works out, and we get rid of a lot of players, taking into account that we don't have a squad that with such depth that we can count on these players coming in at the moment. So we need obviously first team players. We also need depth coming in, coupled with the fact that we've got a couple of academy lads that we can view coming in. Fabiola, how many can you see leaving roughly, and how many can you see coming in, or what way are we viewing this summer window?
Well, in my opinion, the first thing would be to lose a bit of weight in terms of big player contracts. So we need to move on from them. I don't think that this should be the way to go, and I think that the new owners should be doing this. So meaning that the big contract players should possibly leave, for example, Varane or Casemiro. I think that these two are the ones that actually could also move on in the summer. And on the other hand, I know that we're playing a bit with financial fair play by shipping out academy products. This wouldn't be the way that I would be going, but I think that, as I mentioned before, not everyone will make it. So maybe it would be a good point to start cashing in and potentially move on. I would see around 5 players maybe moving on, because we need to keep a structure. Rebuilding won't be made in 2 or 3 summers, so I think that potentially this could be the case. 5 moving out, also sending Amrabat at Fiorentina again, and I think that the big question would be regarding the fullback situation. That's a massive problem. We cannot keep only on 1 or 2 players. We need backup. Are we going to use the academy, or are we actually looking at potential players that won't be costing too much, but on the other hand have that factor that could make them good squad players, or even have a place on the team. So I think, yeah, that's my opinion on this.
Just before I get on to Matt, Fabiola, on the fullback situation, so we're looking at Diogo Dalot, who's turned the corner again, showing promise. Aaron Wan-Bissaka, we've kind of agreed that there's a good chance he might leave the club in the summer. And Fabrizio Romano revealed the other day that Manchester United will sign a left back. Is there enough there in the academy, left and right back, to add options with Tyrell Malacia, who's actually no one knows where Tyrell Malacia is, but with Tyrell Malacia probably coming back into the fold, Luke Shaw, whether he stays or goes, let's say Diogo Dalot stays, do we have academy prospects that could probably fill the gap as backup, or do we need to go into the market, in your opinion?
This is one of those situations where actually I think Alvaro Fernandez could have made a decent choice, but I think he's also struggling in Portugal. So meaning that that on that prospect, I think that we're not that in a good situation. There are 2 or 3 players that I think that could play as a backup, but not as the first team starter. As we mentioned earlier regarding Harry Amas, I need that player specifically to keep up to its standards, but also not have that pressure build up on him. It potentially could kill his chances, and that would be a shame. So I think that we should probably look into the market for someone that is actually cheap and could cover, but also leave room for the academy players to come in. We shouldn't be looking for 80 million, 90 million signings. No.
Matt, let's take it that the likes of Christian Eriksen, he's pretty much come straight out and said that he isn't getting enough game time. Not unhappy by any means, but just not got enough game time. Probably time for him to move on. Let's say Jadon Sancho's going to go. There's probably 2 or 3 more. Varane could go. Casemiro could go. Donny van de Beek's probably going to go. Take into context that there's a few going to leave. Realistically, how many can you see leaving? Like, are we looking at a summer where we could see 8, 9, 10 players leaving? Can we afford to do that, or do we need to bring in enough to cover that? We're not going to bring in 8, 9, 10 players. It's not how we do it. what way do you see this summer going? It's a very important summer because it's the start of a rebuild under the Sir Jim system, which will be quite interesting. In all that context aside, what way do you see the summer going?
I think there might be quite a big clear out myself, but I think the academy will supplement it, and I think we'll look more. He's come out and said, hasn't he? He made the comment about it doesn't take a genius to sign Dale's favourite Mbappe. But the genius is in finding the next one. I think it was also a bit of a veiled dig at City signing Erling Haaland, and Pep's genius at identifying the best striker in the world would definitely improve them. So I think we'll probably see, like you say, 8, 9, 10 leaving, Amrabat included, which was a good point by Fab because I forgot about him. So yeah, and I think maybe we'll sign in 4 or 5 and supplement the rest with academy. We're hoping.
Would be probably the ideal summer for everybody if we can get a couple of key signings in, sign some depth, get rid of some, I won't say deadwood for all of them because that's probably insulting to some players, but definitely a bit of a clear out and a shuffle and bring in some kind of a mix of first team players and a couple of backup players just to give us a bit of depth in certain situations. And as you said, and as you've all said, hopefully the academy can add to that. Ladies, gentlemen, man, boy, child, we've come to the end of the podcast. It's a sad time. I'd like to first of all thank Matt for joining us tonight. As always, offered great insight to everything and a bit of humour on the side, of course. And I did absolutely shaft you on one question. My apologies. Matt, thanks very much. If anyone wants to follow you on social media or Twitter, where will they find you?
Twitter, and I think I can't remember what it is. I think it's Matt_Hendo12.
It is indeed, because I had to search you earlier. Fabiola, thank you so much for making your debut in StrettyCast. Hats off to you. You handled your questions absolutely brilliantly, offered some absolutely fantastic insight into the academy, valuable information, and very enjoyable to listen to. Thank you very much for coming on with us. Where can people follow you on Twitter? And obviously you have the academy page as well. So where can they catch you on that?
Thank you for actually handing me this debut. I think it was a great conversation. They can follow me on Twitter at Fabiola_Teiko. I know it's a bit difficult to even find it. And also follow the Academy account at Reserves United.
Bill O'Donnell, your pronunciation has been impeccable all night. As always, it's been a pleasure talking to you, my man. How can people find you on social media?
Thank you. You can get me on Twitter at O'Donnell there. I just wanted to say, with Fab making her debut, it was only fitting with Kobbie making his, and I think he took it with both hands, just like he did this week.
If you're sadistic enough to want to follow my nonsense on social media, I'm at DayTrippingRed. I'm going to ask you, please subscribe to the podcast. It's a massive benefit to all of us. It really helps the podcast out. And if you don't subscribe to the podcast, I'm going to break into your house at night and I'm going to replace your brand name cereal with own brand cereal. Threats don't get as dangerous as that. Shout out to Sean Connolly, who's missing tonight. We'll be back for the next episode. We have been the StrettyCast. This is episode 194. Thank you for listening. See you next week.